different issue. Yeah. They've got it all resolved. They got it figured out. They had some it's complete. We've accepted everything. We're good now. Good start construction shortly. Looks like it's got settlement. They're going to have to bring more dirt in. 2 years of bond money that they had to put up to. Yeah, neither do they, or we.
Oh, I'm glad. This is just. There it is.
Is it operating? Okay. Okay.
We'll call the meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is about 7:04 p.m. First agenda item is to approve the motion to approve those. I hope everyone has had a chance to read them.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, call.
Steve? Rand?
Aye.
Mayor Fulmer?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
5-0.
Okay, the minutes from the February 1st Planning and Zoning Commission minutes have passed. Jack, staff report?
Yes, Madam Chairman, we have about 20 building permits so far this year. We're anticipating several more coming down the pike shortly because the Clay Creek subdivision streets, stormwater, water, all that stuff, everything's in, and they have recorded their final plat. That'll be coming soon. We should have the first of the Smithville Marketplace plat submittals in May as well, so they can start selling lots and complete the construction stuff as well. All those plans, except I have not seen the MoDOT approval letter yet, but my understanding is MoDOT has approved the entrance construction as well. So that'll all be coming to us on May the first Tuesday in May, 3rd, I think, maybe. Incredibly busy all around the city. We've got a lot of construction going on, and shortly thereafter, the next few months, we're going to have more. The main sewer project for down here, downtown, the main lift station, the overflow basin, and the beginnings of the South Interceptor. Bids opened today. They came in under engineer's estimate, substantially under, so we're in good shape there. That work will start this summer. The water line project for the Bridge Street portion and the Wilkerson Creek Bridge that MoDOT's going to be done will start shortly. We have a meeting tomorrow with that approved contractor to get the schedule worked out and when all that happens, with the anticipation that as soon as they get done relocating the raw water line from the lake and the one line going out, moving it away from the bridge a bit, then MoDOT will come in and close and start their demolition and start the construction of the new Wilkerson Creek Bridge, probably in 45 to 60 days-ish. So that work's going to be going on. We're trying to coordinate the schedule, working with MoDOT on when the new Second Creek Bridge will be going in, because last thing we need to do is have 3 bridges in town closed all at the same time. So things are moving along there. As you may have heard, I'm sure you have, the sales tax for capital improvement passed, as well as the bond. So there are several trails and sidewalk projects from various locations in the city that'll be finalized and going to the Board of Aldermen for their approval here shortly too. So we're incredibly busy. That's all.
Okay. Is there any report on commercial up by the school on the road there and what's happening and going on? I know that it's closed and they're working on that. And
Spire Gas Company is installing, because of the new school up north and its need for gas, They've opened that, it ran lines up to the new school. The anticipated flow and growth up there, the amount of gas they're going to need, they're paralleling a new line. It's a 12-inch gas main that'll be coming up Commercial, comes right up here behind City Hall, goes across the river, goes up and around the spur, the old spur, which is now Bridge Street, and it'll get on 169. It's going to go all the way up 169 to, I believe, 188th Street with a large 12-inch gas main to provide additional gas for the entire community for future development. That's going to continue. They're doing rolling closings of Commercial. My understanding is they're getting ready to move to the south portion of 92. And that portion down there starts at all that gas piping just south of 92 in Commercial. You see all that stuff just north of the Smithville Senior Housing Center there. It's going to run there all the way to 188. We've been working with the bus company and the school district on best way to keep them open. Worked a plan out to keep north-south traffic available either from the north, now it's from the south, or it's now originally from the south, now it's from the north, so that getting in and out of the main entrance to the high school and that administrative campus is capable. So,
Is there going to be any other street closings or 169 or anything?
I don't know how they're going to get to the 169 won't close. MoDOT won't allow it. It's way too many traffic hits on it. They're going to be moving from Hospital Drive, the rest of that line from Hospital Drive, where they started, all the way down to downtown. That's going to be starting here in the next couple of weeks, starting right out here at Mill Street. They're going to run a 12-inch line down Mill Street to Commercial, and then Commercial all the way up to connect into that one on Hospital Drive. And then once they get that done, the hope is to coordinate. We certainly have indicated we do not want them to do the 12-inch line late enough or after the streetscape work's done. We don't want the street torn up after it's done, so hopefully they'll get that stuff through before streetscape is ready to go.
Do they have a time plan to try to have that done?
They're starting phase 2. We asked them to wait until next week because we had board meeting Tuesday, court last night, planning commission tonight, another meeting tomorrow night, and it's going to require them to close the back portion of Meadow,
Okay.
so we asked them to wait hopefully until Monday of next week to slow down the impact it was going to have on 5 or 4 meetings all at once with no access to the parking lot. So they've agreed to do that.
But I meant for final, of course, I know they're trying to finish up on the school and stuff, but to have all the way through and done.
Yeah, no, they
like June, July.
They're going to continue working. That's all I can tell you. They don't need it to operate the school. School has gas. It just becomes a function that they know with the school there's going to be more development right around the school. They'll have gas lines there, so they're going to need the volume of gas coming through a 12 instead of what they've got.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions for Jack, for staff? Okay. Next thing on the agenda is public comment. And if you wanted to make a comment, there's public comment cards here. Have you sign them in, name, address, all that good information, and give them to Brandy, and then we'll have you come up and speak. So you have several, I believe, Brandy.
They're all on Highland Green.
So when we do the public hearing portion on those for the rezonings,
Okay.
that'd be the best time at that point to call those folks up.
Okay, so you say they're all on the Kylie Creek? Okay. Okay, anybody else have public comment that you'd like to fill out a card on Deer Run, the annexation, or Oaks at Paradise Point?
I would like to ask a question. I don't hear too well, but did you address Ambry? I didn't understand you say Amity bridged out and it's closed.
Yeah.
Did you address that?
No, I didn't discuss it at all. It's still under construction. It's probably got another 100 days of construction,
Another 100 days.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah. They had 120, so it's been about 3 weeks, so.
Okay, next thing on the agenda, then we'll move on with public comment and hold the kindly questions until we get to that point. The next thing on the agenda is the Deer Run Estates, single-phase subdivision. Jack?
Yes, you may remember the Deer Run Estates plat was submitted last year sometime, and they were the owner wanted to do 5 to 6 lots, with the back portion 40 acres for his home. Conditions have changed associated with what the owner wants to do. He now wants to sell it. He doesn't want to construct the street. The proposed change would be to sell off the acreage and keep the house on its own lot. So it's basically taking the frontage that fronts onto Deer Run, the name of that street is Deer Run, and splitting off a 5-acre parcel for the existing and its septic system, and then that would allow the remaining 60-some-odd acres to be sold off to another owner. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
This is the one that had, can't get the words out. It had a lot of, do anything with.
Yes, yeah, and if you look at the plat map that you have before you, at the very Zone 80.
Floodway, that's
yeah,
what I was trying
yeah.
to come up
The
with.
floodway is the area that is untouchable. You can't build in it, can't do anything in it, and it's massive, because it's the bottom land down there.
But that's part of the 60 acres, correct?
Yes, it is. And if you recall, the old plat that was approved but never constructed or started on, had 40 acres on the back for a house up on the hill looking out over that valley in the floodplain. This one it'll be a little different. 2 lots total, a 5-acre and 60-some-odd acre. I can't see well enough to identify how many acres it says on there. I think it's 60.89.
Okay, so we had rezoned this, excuse me, from AR to A1,
The other way around.
the other way around. It was A1 and we rezoned it to AR to accommodate that. Now, if they go back to A1 is what they're asking,
No, they're not asking for any zone change. They're
Okay.
simply wanting to be able to plat 2 lots instead of 7.
okay. Okay, so do we need the questions on this? Because we
Nope,
really...
that's only zoning.
Okay,
Zoning requires the 7 questions.
okay. Do we need a motion then on this? I need a motion to approve the Deer Run Estates, leaving it as a 2-lot subdivision. Okay, second?
Second.
Alderman Wilson, and any discussion? Hearing none, call.
Mayor Fulmer?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Rand?
Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
5-0.
Then the vote is to pass, leaving the Deer Run Estates as a 2-lot subdivision. Next on the agenda is the annexation hearing for 2606 Northeast 156th Street.
If I may, Madam Chairman, we do not have any specific step-by-step procedures in any of our codes on annexation, but they are generally a public hearing requirement. So in this one, it's a voluntary request by the owner of that land to bring it into the city limits. The staff report you have before you identifies the significant issues associated with it under state law, which is it has to be contiguous and compact, meaning that the boundary of it with the existing city limits has to be not less than 15% of the total, so that you don't have a small little piece and then annex a incredibly huge piece with just a little bit of it. So with that being said, the 1,221 feet of frontage onto the city limits with the total perimeter of 4,300 gives you 28%. It meets that condition precedent to being able to do it. Procedurally, I would suggest that we open this up for a public hearing and ask anyone who wants to speak for or against the annexation, have the opportunity to do so, and then you guys can listen to that aspect of it. Staff report identifies just the legal issues that needed to be handled first.
Okay, and they're wanting to annex this 20 acres of land into the city limits,
Yeah.
which it is not at this point.
Currently, it's across Double D from it, and it backs up to the lake over there. The core land, not necessarily the lake.
Okay. Okay, do we have any public comment on this property?
We have one.
Okay.
Bill and Sharon Farrar.
I'm Bill Ferraro. I back up to that property, and I guess my first question is, why is it being annexed, just that one section?
Do
That's-
we?
I mean, what's the reason for annexing it across the street when it's all, it's Clay County, the rest of it across the street? I guess that's my question.
The owner wants it to be in the city limits, so they're asking it to annex it into the city limits.
I mean, is there a benefit for him to do that or anything?
That, ultimately, that's up to the owner. I think if he wants to get on city water and the like, yeah, he needs to.
And what kind of houses are we going to get? And hopefully, we're not going to get horse barns and stuff out there, too. That's another thing I'm worried about.
Well, ultimately, that would be part of the next hearing, the zoning hearing and the plating. They're 5+ acre lots, as I recall, so fairly large acreage lots compared to the adjacent property.
There's about 3 acre lots, I believe, on there's what mine looks like, 3, 5, something, I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like there's 3, 3, 3.2, 3.5, 4, and 5.6. So there are various lot
But
sizes.
I guess right across from there, that's the city of Smithville right there, right? From that corner all the way to 92,
No.
just right there to Mount Olivet?
We've got a very discombobulated boundary line. I think that's the politest way to describe it. It bounces all over.
I guess that's what I'm questioning, you're skipping around here and there, I mean, it seemed like it'd all be all continuous somewhere here on there. Because we back to it, I think the next thing they're gonna do, they're gonna be asking us to come to the city, I guess that's my question, really.
The city has a procedure, or a policy of only doing voluntary annexations. So that means the owners of the ground have to voluntarily ask to be in. That's what this is.
If I may, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Along that same line, any annexation into the city that isn't voluntary, in other words, if owners don't want to be annexed into the city limits, it does require a vote of the residents. And so if you are in that area and you don't want to be annexed into that, then it would require a citywide vote for you to be required. It would require more than 50% of the people who vote who'd want that annex. So that would be what we call a forcible annex, but in this case, and in many cases throughout the city, there are people for various reasons, access to water, et cetera, that voluntarily annex to the city, and we do allow that. We don't say, no, you can't annex to the city. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, you just kind of see my point of it too. I mean, it looks like you're skipping around, but I know the Corps right next to it, and the Corps is basically behind me too on there, but
Right, obviously.
There's a lot of the city that if you really looked at the map, it's
Cut out.
city, not city, not.
Now, ideally, we would love to have very contiguous lines for city limit all around the city of Smithville, but it has not been the policy of Smithville to forcibly annex anybody, and we haven't done that at least in the last 11 years.
72.
And- What's that?
1972 was the last time.
1972 was the last annexation, so it's been a number of years. But certainly, those people who do want to annex into the city, we do accept voluntary annexation as long as they meet all the rules and guidelines.
Madam Chairman, so I have a question. Is there a benefit to the city to annex a property like this?
Other than it potentially development, brings in development, which means more tax for the city. They're going to be paying property tax. If they developed in the county, they would be paying just school taxes. So it improves our tax base.
I mean, because we pay sewer to you guys, you know, under, with water's rule, Route 9. So I mean, I don't know, I guess was the water going to come from the city now? He won't have to do like we do, I guess, and stuff like that?
Yeah, it depends on how they connect. If they're connecting force mains, or connecting to the force main that runs along the property, then they will pay sewer bills just like any other city resident does. The water is County 9.
Yeah, well, Route 9's what we got over
Yeah.
there, so.
Yeah.
And it will stay Route 9?
Yep.
But they will connect to the city sewer?
They have the ability to, there's no absolute requirement because the lots are such that it's in a conservation area and they're big enough, the 3-acre stuff that we require.
So they could have septic?
They can have septic. They are accessible via easement directly to force main. The force main runs right along the road, on the north side of the road.
So we don't make them hook to the sewer if they're annexed into the city?
Because it's a force main, no, it's a pressure main.
Okay.
Where this gentleman lives and around the corner to the other subdivision, they all have big giant pumps of the 34 pumping stations that the city maintains. 2 of them one's in his subdivision, one's in the other subdivision around the corner. So you've got big pumps pushing into it, so you've got bigger head pressure.
So that wouldn't affect those pumps any? These
It would-
lots and stuff?
The pumps that these houses would have to be pretty good size pumps, but they can make it, yes.
Okay.
It's like all the businesses along 169, they are on a force main as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question, I didn't fill out a card for this.
Could you fill out a card then, please?
On these public hearings, they just come up and announce their name and address
Okay,
and provide comments.
okay.
My name's Bob Foreman. I'm at 13601 North Virginia Avenue. I just have a couple questions about this. First of all, I totally understand the voluntary annexation. If the owner feels there's benefit to it, I get it. And it would appear to me that the benefit for this owner is to be able to go 3-acre lots with a septic tank. Because you guys accept that, and you're allowing small lots into Smithville, which I think is a bad idea. Okay? You're diminishing what we have.
Okay, why do you feel that way?
Well, because the surrounding areas are not 3-acre lots, they're 5 or 10s, okay? And that depreciates the value of the surrounding properties. So I have a problem with that. I think you guys should be staying towards, like Kansas City is, they're gonna have 5 acres if they're gonna have a septic tank. I think that's kind of standard, if you look around. Not here, but it is other places. Also, wanted to ask, how does this annexation fit into the comprehensive land use plan for Smithville? Because that's really what we're supposed to be following. You guys you're called to do that. In fact, Mayor Fulmer and I worked on that, and other people have, and it's very important that we follow that. So my question is, are these annexations, are these in the area we expect to be in the city of Smithville in our plan? Or is this outside of that, where it's going to be a burden on the city and the taxpayers to run out that way, or, you know what I mean, as far as, sometimes that can be a problem, because these little isolated pockets are tough to police, they're expensive to police, and sounds like this person's only gonna really have police protection as far as any benefit, because, well, you can't hook into a forest main, so. Is this in the plan?
Yes,
It is, okay, that was all the
Yeah.
question was, thank you.
yeah.
This time to address the zoning at Paradise Point or later?
Later. Later, sorry, we're not there yet.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
I'd like to
Alderman
ask
Wilson.
Jack a question on
Yes.
this, just in general, on the AR. Is there a certain percentage of land in our comprehensive plan that is acceptable to be AR? I mean, do we have like a certain percent can be AR, the rest has to be like R1P, R3P?
I would say, no, there is definitively no percentage-based. What we have is in the south and east portion of the city, the eastern edge, and then some on the extreme western edge are in areas what are called conservation areas, identified in the comprehensive plan as natural resource significance, a lot of good trees, creeks and the like. This land is is surrounded by conservation area. Conservation areas have limited restrictions if you're going to put residential in conservation areas. Number one, you have to either do cluster development, putting houses real close together, not less than 25% of the land open, or you use 3-acre lots for septic systems as long as they can get a septic system approved by Clay County, which is what we've done. This is a similar scenario to what we did at Whiskey Ridge, the bluffs at Whiskey Ridge, a couple years ago or a year ago. Same concept, a lot of good trees, and it's in a conservation area, so the only time you can develop in that with residential is either doing cluster homes with a lot of public open space or wide lots, bigger lots, 3 acres.
So now I have another question. We just passed the sales tax and the bond, and we're looking at trails and various things to get to the lake. So now we are looking at voluntary annexation of some land that's out near the lake. Are there going to be sidewalks or trails in that area?
There
joining the
are,
lake?
no, I don't anticipate it. It's on a state highway on front, Double D. Don't anticipate that's going to change anytime. And then the other one is an existing street, which is Mount Olivet or 156th, whichever.
Okay.
And there are no plans in the comprehensive plan to go any further. So if there was a sidewalk built, it would be a sidewalk just along those 2 lots that adjoin that south portion. Nothing further out because it's not intended to come into the city on our comp plan.
Okay.
I'm trying to think.
Can I speak to this?
Yes. State your name.
Name's Art Dobbins. I live at 13550 North Virginia. I mean, I'm not close to it, but I'm familiar with this property. That's core land, or backs up to core land. And that's all a ravine for the most part, or, at the middle of it anyway. Aren't we afraid if we reduce the area down to 3 acre to put septic in, allow them to put septic in, the runoff to the lake? I mean, you're the first step to allow this. So even if the Corps and Clay County may say, okay, well, Smithville allowed it, then, they're going to be more lenient. But are even us concerned about the environment enough to where we don't want septic systems, running into our lake? I mean, they're directly right there.
Septic is underground.
Well, I know, I got septic. I know what septic does.
Well, I apologize, you said runoff, and runoff is on top. We do not allow the ponds.
Yeah, if you're in zoning and planning, you're very familiar with what septic ultimately does. It's in the ground, it's in the groundwater. So, I mean, and you're right there on top of the lake. So in other words, my point is you're allowing them to go from 10 acres down to 3. So you're allowing more septic systems to run into that particular drainage area. Because that is a drainage area. I mean, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that spot. I mean, it's a pretty steep hill going down from both sides.
Is this property any closer than some of the property on Quail Ridge and some of that? I mean, aren't they, and I don't know how big
I'm
acreage
aware of it.
lots those are.
It's right there, because I think that lake comes up against it, and it's a ravine going right there to that lake. That's where that water runs, right into the lake. And so you got
Quail
property
Ridge
over here,
and
property over here, and
Harbortown
septic
both
running down.
And
Do the same
Harbortown.
thing.
Yeah,
That's it. Well, Bridge is all in the sewer system.
okay. They're city sewer.
All 11 houses are.
Is Harbortown city sewer?
Yes.
Madam Chairman. So, Jack, you mentioned that Clay County would have to approve the septic for the 3 acres, so who determines that the septic is going to be adequate there? Is that
The Clay County Health Department, they have to have what's
Okay.
called a soil morphology test, just like anybody who lives on a large lot anywhere,
Well, it
whether it's
seems- yeah.
3 acre or 10 acre.
So it seems to me, if they are going to determine that it's going to be adequate, that should be sufficient then, right?
But are we not the first line of defense here? I mean, I think most of us agree that septic in our groundwater is going to end up in that lake.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that,
So why not nip it now? I mean, or reduce it as much as possible.
if there's
In other words, instead
yeah.
of giving them that 3 acre, give them the 10 acre and
If there's a danger of that, I totally agree, but if there isn't, they determine it's not gonna happen, then, yeah.
water, you know what else flows downhill, so.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mayor Coleman.
Yeah, you need to remember that this is part of our ordinances for the entire city, and there are lots all over the city who are on septic, and that septic drains out into the lake. And that's allowable by the county health department.
I understand that. My point is if you're lax at every point, in other words, we're the first line here, you guys. So if you say, no, we're going to try to reduce this impact here, then that way, the next 2 steps, the county and possibly the Corps, are looking, okay, Smithville wouldn't allow this, so no, we're not going to allow it. We're going to keep it at 10 acres. Do you follow my point here? Yes. I mean, you got to be good stewards of our...
If I may, we're talking about annexation, not lot size.
I know, but they know that the next situation is coming
Okay.
to talk about that. So
That's the scenario we're at is
is
And
the
I
annexation,
fully
can we do
understand
it?
all of these issues need to be discussed substantially, but in order to get to step 2, you have to finish step 1. And step 2, I think he's got some arguments or positions to make.
And my point is we all know here, it's why most of us live in Smithville. We're known for the lake and the nice areas and stuff like that. If we allow this stuff to impact the lake, that is our signature thing here in Smithville. So if we allow things to start impacting that lake, and let's say we don't think it's an impact now, and 5 years from now, by the time maybe they build. But the thing is, what if 10 years from now they start noticing sewage leaking into Smithville Lake? Then, you know, it's going to all come back and slap us all in the face for allowing it to even start. Let's stop it now.
There's another point. Remember when they closed Lake of the Ozarks because of the E. coli?
Exactly.
There was a sewage runoff. All those homes that were undocumented.
Well,
So-
part of Lake,
The boats and the people coming to Party Cove urinating and going to the bathroom in the lake water.
There were other parts of the lake also
Yeah.
that closed because of the sewage runoff and the septic system.
But everything happens.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay. Committee, I need a vote, I need a motion, whether we are going to accept,
Madam Chairman,
yes, I'm sorry.
if the hearing's complete, you need to close the hearing
Okay.
first, and then.
Is there any more comments on the annexation of the 20 acres of land into the city?
Now you
Okay.
can close it.
Hearing none, I need a motion on, the applicant is seeking to annex approximately 20 acres of land into the city. So do we have a motion to annex this 20 acres into the city?
I move to approve the voluntary annexation of land into the city by the landowner.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion by the committee? Yes, Alderman Wilson.
clarification, right now.
Correct. We are just voting at this time on the annexation of the 20 acres into the city of Smithville.
And to be clear, it's to make a recommendation to the board of the
Right.
annexation.
So
This
then it
isn't the
goes
final
to-
say.
Right, and then our position then goes to the Board of Aldermen. They are the ones that would vote on it to whether it will or will not.
Yes.
Okay, I have a first, a second. Any other further discussion? Okay, call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the 20 acres
Recommendation. would be-
recommendation to the Board of Aldermen is to annex this 20 acres into the city of Smithville. The second part of this then comes in with a lot of what was being discussed, and that is changing the initial zoning of this. The owner has applied to annex the 20 acres, which we have approved to go to the Board of Aldermen. They will look at it further and make the decision whether they will agree to that or not. This property is county agriculture, and they want to take it to AR, which is agricultural residential,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. If I may, I'd like to clarify something. We've had a few of late, since we made some changes to our zoning code. Prior to 2014, when we changed the zoning code, A1 was 3-acre lots inside the city limits. And it was set at 3 acres because that was the minimum size for septic systems. When that changed to 3 acres from 1 acre, that's when that ultimately occurred. We put in, for some of you recall, you were here when that happened, the AR designation to separate between ag and AR, and we put in additional use restrictions on the AR. So the lot size is 3 acres still.
Minimum.
Yeah, minimum. Well, they could go down to 2 with sewers. If they were going to use sewers, this one gives the option to do either. But they're doing the larger lot, 3-acre lots. And that was to restrict, at the time, the issue was people having cattle, people having horses or whatever right next to R1 single family, which was our big issue that we were trying to protect. So we changed the lot sizes to the AR, less intense uses on the smaller lots. Our ag lots, the farming lots, they're not less than 10 acres now. As I said, they used to be 3. So we added a buffering layer in for this. And to clarify, this isn't a rezone. Technically, according to state law, we have to set an initial zone, what the initial zoning is, And that's what it would be, assuming that the annexation was approved by the board, then you all will be making a recommendation on what the initial zoning would be for this parcel as it comes in.
And again, the difference between the AR and the A1?
You can use, the restrictions on animal husbandry on AR is substantially more. A1 is whatever you want. So hogs, horses, cattle, crops, whatever, any of the standard agricultural uses. And there's no requirement on A1 that you have a residential structure on it. You can just build a barn and go. So those are the distinctions between the two. Now, I will, from a procedural standpoint, we haven't done many of these in a while, so I wanted to clarify on a zoning, either initial zoning or a rezoning, similar to the annexation, it's a public hearing. Allow people to come speak for or against the issues, and the issues that we're talking about are the 7 items. If you recall, the last time we had one, we had the 7 votes, and we've clarified with our legal counsel how to eliminate that confusion of the converse question related to how many, or what the extent was. And when we get to the ultimate question, the chairman has a new list of questions that allow us to answer each of the 8 items in the ordinance, which are the same ones we've been dealing with. So from a procedural standpoint, Madam
Okay.
Chairman, if you open it for a public hearing and let
Yes.
the for and against, same thing, they put their addresses, they don't have to have a comment card on the public hearings.
So we've already heard a little bit on this, but if anyone else has some comments that you'd like to make on this, I know we've already had a few, but yes, ma'am.
Lucy Hirsch, 1 North Virginia. First, I'd like to thank you for volunteering to be on the committee. I served 2 terms on this committee years and years ago, and it's not an easy seat to sit in. Secondly, I'd like to say, if this piece we're talking about can be put on sewers, yes?
Some of them, yeah.
It's capable of being sewered. So my only comment is, why in the world would you allow them to do anything else?
Public comments? Yes, sir.
I filled the card out. Good evening. So I'm Dwayne Brooker, 15708 Quail Ridge Drive. So we back up to this property. In my comment, maybe this is as much education as anything else, 2 comments. The zoning, so I looked at AR, and the thing that bothers me is, of course, the animal husbandry piece of, I know it's limited, but there's still a horse, there's some hogs, there's lots of chickens, not compatible with our neighborhood, which obviously is going to affect, I'm assuming the houses will be similar or equal or higher price than what we have. So I'm concerned there. I didn't know if there are other options for just residential to where you can restrict that. And we have covenants that say we can't keep livestock or chickens. We would like to probably see that consistent. Not speaking for my neighbors, but I suspect that they have similar concerns. The second is, the plotting is pretty simple. All right, we drew lines, we broke up the lots, made sense. Based on that picture, I'm assuming individual drives going to Double D and individual drive going to 156, or is there more detail on what the development is actually going to look like, other than I've drawn lines and platted it and that's what we're talking about? Because that could answer a lot of the questions on the sewer, could answer a lot of questions on many things else.
My anticipation is that each lot will have their own driveway.
Okay.
There's no streets to be constructed.
They don't have to, they could. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
That, again, dropping out to Double D and dropping out to 156 there's no issues with approvals and doing those things.
My understanding is that MoDOT has already approved the access points on Double D, and ours would be just like any other.
Okay.
They would have to make sure, access points for us is more of a sight distance. We don't want a driveway sitting just below a hill, so people coming over the hill are going to potentially have a tractor or something, or a
But MoDOT looks
a
at that
vehicle.
too, I believe, don't they?
Yeah, but MoDOT's
I mean,
over on the other side. The one, in Lot 1, which will back up to the Quail Ridge folks, it's got to have visible, it's got to be at I don't know if it's the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill.
Looks like the
There's a
bottom of the hill.
There's a
It's got to be
distance.
the bottom of the hill because that's about where that lot starts in that low area. They're already clearing, so.
Ultimately, it becomes a visibility standpoint. We have
They
engineering
already know what
still.
they're doing. I just want to know, why don't you guys have insight on it? Not that it's your fault, but I'm saying, to me, that would have come in of where they're, what they're.
Where the
looking at.
driveways are going?
In general, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be on the frontage, and we do that when we issue building permits.
Okay.
So I guess a little bit to answer your question, we have the lots and stuff, but when they get ready to build, they have to have building come to the city and they all the city standards.
Look over here at some of the other developments, that are a little bit larger, they're going to probably show some streets along with the planning.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm assuming.
And
there
again,
are
they'll
no
have to
streets.
bring that plat to us and we have to look
That's why I'm
at
assuming there's
it.
no streets, they're going to run 4 of those out onto Double D, one out to 156. Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's good. And there's no other options on zoning, AR is the, kind of that middle ground for
It's
3
the
acres? I mean, that's what they requested, I'm assuming you all can make a decision on what you think the most appropriate zoning is for them, if you choose to annex them.
That's ultimately what the hearing's for. They've requested AR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
If I
mean,
may make a comment also, I know that we've addressed this issue a few times over the last several years since I've been mayor. One of the issues related to animals on property and things like that, we do allow some of those animals to be on this property. However, we also have some pretty strict public nuisance ordinances, that in the event, if they're not properly caring for their animals, and it becomes a nuisance to the neighbors around there, then that becomes a violation of a city ordinance.
And that's after the fact, though.
Well, that's part of the planning for what went into the zoning for AR. Because you will have property owners that have animals on their property, they take care of them, they clean them up, and there's no public nuisance issues with their
But
neighbors.
that's my point, is that they requested a zoning of AR, and is there a residential zoning that is similar that allows 3+ acre lots that has restrictions on it as far as animal husbandry type things?
No, I mean, basically you go to just agriculture and they can have anything. I mean, you go to A1, they can have a lot of things, but they have to have bigger lots.
I got that, but they're not asking for agriculture, they're asking to build residences.
So they're asking for the AR, which is smaller lots than the A1. And then the next thing down would be R1,
some
which is
version of.
mainly, like subdivision lots. So, you go from bigger lots, acreage, large lots, to where you can have anything. And then we narrowed that down to AR, which was the smaller lots, and they
And there's a
have limited,
There's a limitation on the size of an R1 lot?
I'm sorry,
There's a limitation on the size of an R1 lot?
yes, minimum 3 acres, correct?
No, R1, no, it's a, it's a
Not
frontage.
R1, I'm sorry, A1.
Yeah, R1A it's a road frontage of minimum 100 feet.
So all these meet that?
Yeah.
You're asking R1, but you mean to ask AR, I think is what you're asking.
But I said,
No,
yeah.
there's one AR, which allows animal husbandry. I'm assuming R1 does not. So I'm asking,
Right.
why not zone it R1, where that has that restriction on animal husbandry? Then we don't have that issue if somebody brings in 30 chickens and we go.
Well, because then they could put a lot more lots on there,
They could. But they've given you a plat, right?
so,
That's what you're approving.
but, then they could come in and say, well, they could split that up, couldn't they? And they could go with a lot more houses in there.
But that's it, but that's some additional approvals.
And ultimately, this gets down to the applicant has requested. We don't have to do it.
So,
That's it. Thanks for your time.
But if we zone it
Thank you.
something that the applicant doesn't want, we buy the lots as a city.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to take care of the damages we cause the owner. Because it's theirs, they get to use it however our rules allow. Why we have public hearing and we do all this. So in this scenario, I would strongly suggest, unless the applicant is willing to consider a change, we either approve or deny and not set it as some other zoning. That creates liability on the city.
We would have to have a reason for an item, right?
yes. Oh, sorry. Adam?
Shirley, this is, because I don't hear it well at all, I probably only heard 30% what's going on, but is this on the property at 156th Street in DD that I'm...
Yeah, it's yours, yes.
Is there something I can explain to you to make this better?
Don, you need to state your name and address for the record, so Brandy has it. And
So Brandy has it.
Yeah.
I'm Don Burns. I live here in Smithville.
What's your address, Don?
505 Rock Bridge, in Great Hawk Lake subdivision. Okay.
Don, I'm going to talk for you, and then they're going to ask questions. Don's the developer of this. He bought the land, and he's wanting to divide it up. Do you want questions?
Well, I was trying to pick up on some of the questions y'all had, and I keep hearing septic, septic, septic. There ain't gonna be no septics. There's a forced main out there, and I will not allow septics. Anybody buying that knows right up front, there's not gonna be septics. Everything has to be approved by me. I develop it. There will not be any cheap homes. I know you guys live in Quail Ridge, and I know a couple of you are disgruntled about where your property lines are. That, I don't have anything to do with that. But you can't take that high dollar a piece of property and sell it off and put little houses on it. It just isn't going to happen. You're probably going to see $500,000 houses go in right there. And you're going to, there probably will only be 4, maybe not 5. There might not be one built on the lot next to the airplane place down there. The other 4 lots, there will be. But there's not going to be, the city won't let people put chickens and horses and stuff and crap like that in there. And this, I anticipate being the quality as good or better than Quail Ridge and Harbortown. I lived in Harbortown for 10 years, guys. I know all about the force mains out there. I know all about the plumbing out there. I've built houses for over 40 years. I know what's going on. And I don't know if that helps at all at what you guys were saying, but there's not going to be any septics out there.
Yeah, I think the concern, my concern was the AR, and unless there's other types of restrictions you're on the same house, that you just can't guarantee what people are going to do.
Oh yeah, you can too. When you put it in the restrictions.
That's what I'm saying.
When it's in restrictions that you are on the sewer, that means you are on the sewer. You can't put.
He was talking about the animal husbandry.
Oh, okay. That will go in to the covenants. Yeah. See that, the sewer, God, I lived in Harbortown for 10 years. I can't remember the water district. I think it's 9 or something like that.
Rule 9.
Yeah. But it is not going to be a piece of trash subdivision. I assure you of that. Jack and Brandy can both verify the houses that I built in Smithfield and Staley Farms and other areas, that we are not into that. But I hope I've answered. If you guys got a question, shoot it at me.
I've got one. How about outbuildings?
What we're going to do on outbuildings is a similar thing like I seen Craig Porter do in Harbortown. Even though there wasn't any, I've already got one gentleman that wants to do an outbuilding, but the front facade of an outbuilding has to be the front facade of a house, and he wants to connect a breezeway to it. And they're gonna be set at a certain size, like maybe a 24 by 30 or 30 by 30. I think Harbor Town, we had a 24 by 30, but nobody ever built one. But there's not gonna be any trash buildings built like that. They're gonna have the frontage, like the frontage of a house. You know, partial stone, stucco on the front, and your building's gonna have to look like that.
That was my main concern was the outbuildings, because they wouldn't let us put
Well-
it there. It pissed me off when I come in. I spent all my money up there. I know where you live, you know, around the corner. I do where you live over there. You can't sign.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with putting no trash up, but I don't want outbuildings. You know, I spend a lot of money, my life savings probably sitting there, and I don't want to come over there and somebody put one in metal horse barns. That's my big thing about it.
And there, I know one other,
I mean, you know where I'm coming
I
from.
grew up on a farm, and I don't want anything from that farm. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm not running anybody down here that lives on a farm and has horses and chickens. But I don't want anything on this, it ain't gonna happen.
I agree with you. We spent all that money and they wouldn't, because I intentionally put the dome, and they said we couldn't. I'm gonna be mad if I spent all this money. Luckily, I was able to put a suspended garage on mine, but I was wondering, they wouldn't let us, and then they turned around and come in right behind me. That's what I was gonna be mad about.
Well, we're also, I'm working with an attorney, we're also, because a lot of that land down in there, it's been in the there's gonna be another one up closer. These guys, if they want to have to have a pretty damn good reason why to go back in there, because, yeah, if they want to go in there and clean some butt brush, nobody cares about that. But if they want to take a tree out, then they're gonna have to come to me. And I'm not like that, I'm not gonna be easy to get along with.
You
Yes,
gonna make an
sir.
exception for honey locusts?
Huh?
You gonna make an exception for honey locusts?
Okay,
Are you gonna make an exception for honey locust trees? Honey locusts?
You know, they make great firewood. I mean, like I said, I grew up on a farm, and that's what they had us cutting for firewood.
Hey, Don,
okay. Call the order just a second. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have a couple other questions, and then I want to try and move forward, but basically, I think Don has answered the fact that he will have some covenants and restrictions on the subdivision, and it will be put on city sewer. So that sounds like it has answered a lot of the concerns and the questions. So, yes, Alderman Wilson?
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
I would like to know why you're considering AR versus R1. Why not go the extra mile and go to R1?
You mean tell you the truth?
Yes.
I think she's
I
trying
don't
to...
know enough about the two, the difference. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't.
Okay.
I would have to ask Jack the difference.
And it's the factor of use, what you can do on the property. Do you want it to be like a Greyhawk house, where you're limited to residential, single-family homes? Or do you want it to have the ability for people to have a single horse or?
No,
Yeah.
just a house and a small approved shed.
Okay.
I don't want any horses, I don't want any chickens, I don't want any.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry,
what she's,
that's
yeah,
just me.
okay. She's asking then, would you be willing to change your request from AR to R1?
Is that what it needs to be?
Well,
Nobody has the right to come back later and say, I want to bring a horse in here.
Then you want to change your application to R1, Don.
Okay, well, then I'll come in and see you
And there
next.
isn't also.
No, you can do that here.
Oh.
If you get up there and state for the record, you want to change it to
I had
R1.
another follow-up question on the
Okay.
R1, Jack.
Hang on, Don, hang on.
On the R1, then do they have to hook to the sewer?
No, not, because it's the acreage that allows them to, but he's indicating
Change it to R1. Shirley.
So I think we do have a couple other comments before you make your motion to change.
Regarding the R1, let's say exactly what happens in this whole group. If it's already zoned R1, somebody could go in and put 20 house sub in there on R1, correct? No. My dad said, no, once it's zoned R1, I'm just saying if it's AR,
Jack, wouldn't it have to go to R3?
I can't hear
Would it have
anything,
to-
there's too much noise going on.
Would it have to go to R3, got to be high dense, what she's talking about?
he said they're not gonna be animals.
Yes, ma'am, can we get your name and address for the record, please?
We need to make sure that the comments are going into the microphone so that it can be recorded, so Brandy over there in the orange shirt can take notes and put it in the minutes. And we get everybody talking. Yeah.
So, yes, ma'am, would you come and just state your name and address in the microphone and then indicate your question? That way we get it recorded.
Okay, sorry, Nancy Langley, I live at 15604 Quail Ridge Drive. My question is, if it gets zoned as R1, it opens it up to a different kind of subdivision.
Correct.
So my preference would be, he's already said there's not going to be animals, and that's side of an AR, correct?
Well, unless you like AR.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just, I guess I would like to see it zoned AR so that there's no possibility of it changing anywhere down the road to be a 20 sub. My only
Madam
point.
Foreman?
I just didn't like it going to R1.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question to ask Jack relative to that.
Okay. Excuse me.
Mr. Hendricks, is AR1 minimum lot size of 3 acres?
No, R1 has a minimum lot size, it has a lot frontage requirement.
R1, what about AR?
AR has minimum lot size of 3 acres.
Okay, and so if
Well,
we-
in this case, he could reduce it to 2 if he wanted, but his plat doesn't show that.
But the point I'm making is that he could go to R1, but that would then allow somebody else to come in and put more, and reduce or increase the number of homes that could go on that subdivision.
Correct.
Whereas if you leave it at AR1, I'm sorry, AR, the lot size, the minimum lot size would be 3 acres. And so you may not want to request an R1 zoning change. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one is, on R1, don't they have to have curbs? So,
But they're not building any streets. Majority of
that was the case, because if, then no lot size can be under 3 acres there, which it would then help maintain that area compared with other subdivisions currently in there.
Can we table this change until?
yes. Yes, I have another question back here. Please state your name,
Table.
address.
We'll postpone all of it until May.
Yeah, I'm Steve Langley, live at 1 Quail Ridge North, it's 15604 Quail Ridge Drive. Steve Langley. Don, nice to meet you. Met your son the other day.
Okay.
I think most of the questions have been answered, to my concerns. The two that I just want to make sure are a matter of record are all the lots going to be on sewer, Are you going to require all the lots to have sewer?
Require that.
Including the one that runs north and south behind us on,
That's it.
This, and the sewer line,
Runs right here.
I think probably what we're going to do is
Yeah,
table
somewhere.
this until he looks at it a little closer.
there's a sewer line, 56th Street.
yeah, because we're right here on this corner.
Yeah, you're right. Wait a
We're
minute.
right here.
You're right here, Bob, my son. That sewer line and water line runs right
Yeah.
down here. Then the
I have one more question.
Yeah, ultimately, we gotta have, this is between you
Right.
and them and the commission.
I think,
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman? The other question then is, I think I heard you say that in the covenants, you're not going to allow livestock on the lots.
No,
Is that-
sir.
No, sir, you're not, or no,
No.
sir, you will?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just want,
chickens, no
I
hogs.
I didn't think so, but I just want to make sure that was a matter of record. Thank you.
Adam, you had a comment earlier.
Adam Neighbor, 1025 Aspen Circle, here in Smithville. Well, as most of you know, I served on this board for 8 or 9 years. Was an alderman for 8 years. One of the suggestions that I would have before you said, hey, let's postpone this until next time to make sure everything's lined up. If there's anything that I learned from being on here is that when things get rushed through, usually mistakes get made, and the mistakes that get made here are not necessarily the easiest to fix. Sign ordinance is the first one that comes to mind. I was going to say, tonight you guys are down 2 board members, and not saying anything against a couple of new members getting added and et cetera, plus the new alderman coming in. Between the annexation thing was one thing, the plat's even one thing, but the zoning changes, those have always been a huge deal, evident by the number of people that are here tonight. And what I was going to suggest is particularly these the zoning changes and et cetera, that this board may be well served to postpone multiple of these items to your next meeting, get the 2 missing board members here, and start this one afresh with the new. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Someone else had a comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Krokstrom. I live at 109 West Pine. And I may be just directing this to Jack or whoever might know. Is it possible to require a contingency before a vote on something like this? This gentleman's agreeing in front of everybody not to do this, this, and this. But I know a number of years ago, I sat in this meeting that had to do with a preschool going in my neighborhood, and it was agreed to right here, and everybody was smiling and giggling or joking around, that none of the traffic was going to be run through my neighborhood, and it is now. And because it wasn't written down in stone, we've got traffic just like they said it wasn't going to be. So is it possible to agree to something before you guys actually make a decision on it, have it in paper, so it's binding?
Well, and potentially, your matter was not a zoning matter from a zone district change.
I understand that. It's just an example of...
Right, but the reason I'm highlighting the difference for you all is the process in there was a conditional use permit that has specific provisions for you to set conditions in order to approve it. And what Mr. Krokstrom's identifying is, in his scenario, they were wanting to put a daycare in the old church, and there was a discussion of, well, we'll do this, and we'll do that, and we'll do this, but there was never a vote by the commission to set them as conditions. That works in a conditional use permit scenario. It doesn't on a zone district. The zone district sets that. So yes and no, it can, but it doesn't in this scenario.
Is it possible in this scenario for him to bring you a piece of paper saying, I agree not to, or to include this into the
Yeah, he can.
into the deed, I guess, right?
That would be ultimately up to him on how he wanted to do that.
And I'm asking.
To submit it to this board.
He'd have to do it here because you guys are voting on a recommendation to make the 7 findings that of what the impact is to the neighborhood. And I don't want to belabor the point, but ultimately, the question you guys will be answering with your votes here whenever we get there, if we get there, those are the questions that have to be asked and answered as to whether or not it impacts positively, negatively, whatever. Unless you want to suggest that he come back with a overlay, he can change the zone request to R1P with the overlay district that limits the uses in it, but that's up to the applicant.
I mean, I'd say I don't write down all these things on a piece of paper and sign it.
Right. Well, the problem is it won't work legally because the way it sits, it has to be an overlay district that you don't have an application for. It works a little differently. That's why I'm sitting there.
So with the R1P, that's more restrictive. So then
Yes.
could you say in the R1P zoning that the lot sizes had to be 3 acres? Is that?
You could do it that way, or you could do the AR district with a conceptual plan over the top of it that says it will not have these things. But it has to be a conceptual plan. Right. It has to be a conceptual plan. It has to meet the notices, and none of that's occurred. Even though everybody's had the notice and they're here, it hasn't been noticed up, public notice saying he's going to do a conceptual plan, which would be the restriction stuff. The way it's structured in our ordinances. Does that make sense?
And with the overlay, or the conceptual plan, the lady's questioning in the back about if it was zoned R1. With the R1P, with the overlay, then if this development, for whatever unknown reason, possibly didn't come to fruition, it still would be zoned R1P, correct?
And this would be the P,
And that would be the P.
yes.
Okay.
But that has to be noticed up through the paper in order for it to be legal.
Right.
Because someone who's sitting at home right now that would have got the notice on this, potentially, that was an option coming down the pike.
Right.
So we're not worried about offending anyone in here. They're here. Person that doesn't have the notice that we have to get the notice to. So if we're going to change it, that's the way it has to happen.
Okay.
Madam
Yes.
Chairman, I think it's clear that this ought to be postponed because I want to make sure Don understands exactly what he wants to do.
So,
before he
do I have a motion, or excuse me, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing process of this. I think you all have kind of made it known to us, and I think we've had a lot of questions and a lot of answers. Don, thank you. And we are probably going to table this at this point and let you talk with Jack.
Madam Chairman, it should be
Postponing. So do I have a motion to
hang on.
post?
Surely, just.
Yes.
From a legal standpoint, I think he has a right to have you just thumbs down it or thumbs up it. But that's what I want to chat
Okay.
with him about so he understands. They're wanting to do all the stuff you said that you would do. They want to wait, put the notice out to make it legal and overlay district, keeping your zoning the way it is.
Well, if I sit there and handwrite it, that's not legal?
Because it hadn't been publicly noticed up to people who got the notice on this.
I'm just talking about for the things like the animals and stuff like that. It doesn't make,
You can't do it that way. So you're stuck with wait until May 3rd, and I apologize, I know, Don, that's why I'm speaking loud.
That's okay.
So your options are wait until May 3rd or seeing what happens tonight. That's your options. Because we didn't notice it up to have a preliminary plat, like this, lay over top for a conceptual plan. We can't do it that way, because there's somebody sitting at home that may have a problem with this, if we did it that way. We've got folks that wanted R1, and we got folks that wanted AR, and so, your option. You can ask for the vote and then regroup, or you
What
can...
if the vote goes down?
You can always come back and ask it again, because you're going to lay it over the top anyway.
That's true.
I didn't know this was gonna be this hard. Can we vote on it, folks? Let's vote on it, see what happens.
Okay.
I think I'm a man of my word, and if it goes down, then I'll bring back the legal document.
All right. Do I have a motion to go forward with the AR, and then we will vote? Second? Okay, let's take a vote.
Wait, hang on.
Oh.
We got to do the questions.
Sorry.
This is the questions case, 'cause this is
Questions.
zoning,
Questions
to make the findings.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's.
Yeah, we can't just do a thumbs
Okay.
up, thumbs down anymore. We'll do it
Okay,
this way.
so we have to go through the questions, okay, on the rezoning. Is the proposed change compatible with the character of the neighborhood? Call?
Well,
Aye? Or yes? Correct?
yeah, and I think each question, you need to give them the opportunity to discuss. And it's
Okay.
only, Don doesn't get to discuss anymore, you can go sit down. This is only for your discussion now that you've taken the public comment.
Okay. Question one on this. Change compatible with the character of the neighborhood? It's a yes or no question, and discussion.
Any discussion, and if there is no discussion, then you go to the vote. Seeing none.
Saying none, call.
Aye.
No.
Mayor Palmer,
Aye.
No.
3-2.
Is the proposed change consistent with the comprehensive plan and the ordinance? Discussion? Okay, call?
Alderman Wilson,
No.
Mayor Palmer. Rand,
Aye.
Shirley,
No.
3-2.
Are there adequate public utilities or public services available? Discussion? Hearing none, call?
Mayor Palmer,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Rand,
Aye.
Steve. Shirley,
Aye.
5-0.
Is the property suitable with the existing restrictions of uses? Discussion? Hearing none, call?
Rand,
Aye.
Steve. Mayor Palmer,
Aye.
Melissa Wilson-Hurd.
No.
Shirley,
Aye.
4-1.
Has the property remained vacant as zoned? Questions? There, do you mean as zoned AR or as zoned as ag?
Existing zoning.
Existing.
Zoning.
Okay. Has the property remained vacant as it is zoned currently? Questions? Call?
Steve.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Palmer,
Aye.
Shirley,
Aye.
5-0.
Is the district compatible with nearby land? Questions? Discussion? Hearing none, call?
Alderman Wilson,
No.
Mayor Palmer,
Aye.
Steve. Rand,
Aye.
Aye. Question 7 was kind of weigh the extent of detrimental effect on nearby properties. And then we answered the following question. Does the proposal cause a disproportionate loss to adjoining landowners compared to the public gain? Discussion?
Isn't that two different questions?
Yes and no.
Yes
The
and no.
question, and I had conversation with legal to make sure we had this done right, so we didn't have the converse. If you look at your items in the staff report, 400.560.C7, that's the 7th question, it asks, what is the extent to which the amendment may detrimentally affect nearby property values, properties?
Right.
Well, that's not a yes or no question, and if you read the next one, number 8, the question is whether that detrimental effect that you may have found, does it cause a disproportionately great loss to the adjacent property owners versus the public gain? So the old question 7 that we were trying to converse, and whether it's right or wrong or left or yes or no and how to ask it, it's a question of how much negative impact will this bring on, and the question you ask is, does that outweigh the public gain?
So a yes would be that it outweighs the public gain.
Right, so you have to determine what the, in your own mind, this isn't a vote decision, but you make a decision yourself as to whether
You feel
the
it's a detrimental
extent, whether
effect.
this change, in this case, it's a initial zoning to AR, the extent which this may detrimentally affect the nearby properties. Once you have made that determination yourself, then you vote on the next question using that. Whether this proposal, using the value you set as how negative this will be, does it cause a disproportionate loss to the adjoining property owners versus the public gain for the development? Does that make sense? So if it's a high loss and a low public gain, your answer should be no. If it's the other way around, it should be yes. Good thing for us today, it's somewhere in the middle. That's why you guys get paid the big bucks.
Any other
Does that make
questions?
sense?
I want to clarify, if I do not want to vote for this,
If you oppose it, that's a no.
oppose it. I'm a no.
Yeah, we eliminated that confusing converse of the question so that yes means you like it, no means you don't. And it makes it easier for the audience to understand too. Thumbs up, thumbs down on each element.
Any other discussion? Call.
Mayor Palmer?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
No.
Fran?
Yes.
Steve? Yes. Shirley?
No.
3-2.
We have the findings of fact now that we can insert in the ordinance associated with your votes. That vote total, all that will go to the Board of Aldermen as that lays out, and then they get to,
They will have the final determination
Yep,
on whether it
using
goes
your-
forward as AR or whatever. Does Mr. Burns need to do anything else before the Alderman meeting?
talk to the neighbors.
Okay. Then we'll have you visit with Mr. Burns later?
Yep.
So, okay. All right, that issue is done.
Don,
Yes.
you have one more.
Oh, I do, I'm sorry.
Okay. On this, okay. So this is on the plat
Yes,
of that.
yes.
Okay,
Right.
so on the 156th Street, we have annexed it into the city. We have said, we have looked at the things of leaving it as an AR. Now we are looking at a single-phase final plat approval called Oaks at Paradise Point subdivision. The property is currently undeveloped ground. You all know where it's at. We're looking at the following criteria on making a recommendation on the plat we have before us. Looks like there are
5 total lots.
5 total lots. They are ranging, boy, this is little print. Just a little over 3 acres up to
566.
566, okay. On the 5 lots. Again, we will go through the questions, correct? We will vote on this, and then this will go to the alderman with our other recommendation. Anything else you need to add to that, Jack?
Sir, incidentally, yes. I just noticed it as the discussion went the way it did. This plat, as it's laid out, if you look at lot 1, 292.97 feet frontage. 2, however, has 2, it's a corner lot, so it's got frontage on Double D and the other one, 800. 8 and 209. We have a distinction in our AR district. In order for these to work as 200-foot lots, in AR, they have to be attached to sewer. So 3 of these lots have to be attached to the sewer by the plat. It just dawned on me to address.
Oh, yes, I understand.
You have lot widths that are 200 feet wide, that means they have to attach to the sewer.
Yeah.
So we have a written document, at least on 3 of the 5 lots, that they have to attach to sewer.
Yeah, you got that one, and that one, and that one.
Yep. So, that, from, at least those 3 lots are required to attach to that force main.
Oops, gotta get my question.
That's the only thing that, based upon the questions and concerns that came up, that I didn't evaluate going in. Didn't even dawn on me to say, during the other lots have to attach. Lots 2 and 5 do not, even though they have AR district, they're large enough, 3 acres. They do not need because of that. Does that make sense? Sorry about that. Just dawned on me.
Okay, so we are voting and going through the questions on the actual plat that is provided here. So again...
Well, no, actually, this one doesn't have those questions.
We don't have to?
Nope, those questions only apply to zoning. I've provided a staff report.
Okay.
Our engineers have reviewed it, and this is a subdivision question, not a zoning question. And it becomes, does it meet the design standards of our code? Does it meet the design standards of the APWA and the general design standards of the comprehensive plan? And our engineer's recommendation was solely that they tweak the approval language on here because they had the wrong language for who signs off on it. So that was the only tweak they had. All the engineering and surveying met our standards. So the question is whether, and you open this up for comments for people who want to talk. This is a public comment. It's not a public hearing necessarily. It's not a zoning, and it's not an annexation, so it's not a public hearing, but they are able to give public comment based upon their submittals.
Okay. So opening this up for public, if you have signed a card and given it to Brandy, do you have anything on this?
No, not on this one. No, 6 and 7, no 8.
Okay. Okay, hearing none, then do we just do a...
For discussion to
open-
yourselves?
we have to
If you
have a
have
motion
questions-
first?
If you have any questions of me during the process, I'll do my best to answer them. But you have my staff report based upon the engineer stuff.
Do I have a motion to consider the following criteria and make a recommendation on the plat to the alderman?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
I guess I need to be educated here. I'm kind of struggling with the fact that we're voting on these when we postpone the zoning.
No.
No, we did not
no.
end up postponing the zoning.
No, that was the 7 votes.
Okay.
That was-
So,
yeah.
so that passed, so now we're
Yeah.
moving forwards anyway, okay.
Yep.
It'll go to the alderman.
Okay.
And so we'll give them our recommendations on this end. So.
Right.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, call.
Rand,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
No.
Shirley,
Aye.
4-1.
This will be on the 17th? Is it 17th? The April 17th?
April 17th.
The subdivision process will, the annexation and the zoning are ordinances. They are 2 readings. They occur at 2 separate meetings. So we'll have one on the 17th for the first reading of the ordinance, and second for annexation, and first reading for the ordinance of rezoning. Then the first meeting in May will be the second reading of both of those ordinances, and then we'll do the final plat approval as a part of that. No sense in voting on the final plat because it's not allowable until the other 2 pass. If any of them fail, they all fail. At least as it relates to this subdivision itself.
Okay.
So April 17th will be the next,
So April 17th, Alderman meeting will be the next time this will come up for discussion. Okay. Okay, moving on. We're looking now at rezoning hearing for 2000 Northeast 132nd Street.
if I could, I'd like to clarify, this one is the 7 questions again that we did for, we have to make, the law requires you to make findings of fact based upon those 7 elements, 8 elements actually, but as we have indicated, that 7th element is actually a value you assess, and then do your balancing of interests on the 8th question, which is actually the 7th question for us now. So same concept applies here. Staff report for rezoning. This is a true rezoning. It's currently inside the city. There's no annexation needs. I have the staff report here that identifies the comprehensive plan location in it, the streets and sidewalks issues associated with AR are the same as what we've had in ag districts. We don't, we generally don't want them, don't want to require storm sewers and the like. It consolidates water quicker because we're trying to avoid runoff. So that's the staff report here. This one will be another public hearing, Madam Chairman, like we did before. So it will be opened up for a public hearing for the public to speak for or against the rezoning. And then when they're done with that, you close it. The board gets, the commission gets to discuss it between yourselves. You can ask anyone questions like you did before. And then once you complete the discussion, we'll call the 7 votes.
On this, the applicant has submitted an application proposing to rezone approximately 73 acres from A1, Agriculture 1, to AR, Agriculture Residential. The proposed zoning classification allows for large lots, not less than 3 acres, It will allow septic systems to be installed for the area, as the A1 district requires lots not less than 10 acres. On this, it is already annexed into the city, is that correct, Jack?
Yes.
And so sewer is available?
No.
No.
No sewers around there.
Okay, so these would have to be septic?
Yes.
Okay.
If you, and if, to clarify, in the staff report, I've identified the comprehensive plan requirements associated with it. This is a true conservation area. It's in the southwest quadrant of the city, so it has the drainage areas, it has the mature trees, all of those things that the conservation area, part of our comprehensive plan, desires and seeks to protect. So with that, the only way you can put any residential into a conservation area is, and I apologize, I went to the wrong, yeah, residential uses are allowed, but should either be on large lots of no more than one dwelling unit on 3 acres if the property uses septic tanks and the septic is approved by Clay County, or clustered in areas of more than 20 acres with a minimum lot width of 75 feet if it will access public sewers. So in this one, there's no public sewers, so clustering won't work. And generally, and this is all on page 21 of the comp plan, conservation areas are located in locations that currently have no sanitary sewers, in which the city is not prioritized for sanitary sewers. We don't have any 25-year plans to ever get sewers in this vicinity. Our 25-year plans have them going down Wilkerson Creek towards Forest Oaks, and then the other side of 92 for First and Second Creek. So we don't have any 25-year plans to come over in this area with sewers. If you have any other questions of my staff report, I'll do my best to answer what I can.
Ask a question on what you just said.
Yes, I'm going to open to public comment. If you'd like to come up and state your name and address, and then you can ask the question.
This isn't my comment yet, this is just a question. You said you didn't have any plans for Wilkerson Creek, and then you talked about Forest Oaks. Aren't they on Rocky Branch?
Yeah, the Rocky Branch of Wilkerson Creek, yeah. Rocky Branch comes down and connects into Wilkerson
Okay, because
Creek.
this is also a different part of Wilkerson Creek.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all, I was just clarifying.
Yes, yes.
Are you going to call us in order, or how's it going to work?
In this one, it's a public hearing, so they're able to come speak.
Yes, so if anybody wants to speak to this,
State your
just
name and address for the
come forward and
record.
state your name and address.
I'll get things started. I'm Margot Farnsworth, 13223 North Virginia Avenue. I am an area neighbor, and want to say good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mayor, staff. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I have agency in this in addition to being an area neighbor, in that I served at the pleasure of 2 presidents and served as an executive director and senior fellow of a watershed organization working for water quality and supply issues. So when we look at an area like this and what the comparison is, and you can correct me, Mr. Hendricks, if I'm wrong on this math, but with the current way things are zoned, 7 houses would be allowed. And so, that can be an okay thing. But what we would be moving to is 20 houses. So when you look at septic, and as good as septic can ever be, the best septic system in the world, with age, will eventually leak. So when you look at a more than doubling of the amount of houses that are there, then what you're looking at is adding not only an E. coli problem, and it was so great to hear other people that are talking about water quality, but also pharmaceuticals. And those are boogers that we have not figured out how to clean out of our water at this point. So those are things that are going from septic into geology of this area, it moves, and they are eventually going to get there, even with the best maintained septic systems. So then what you have to ask yourself is a question about density and how many units are on that land. And certainly you can see the difference between 7 and 20. When you add that to the fact that this is in a conservation area and the fact that we're not only dealing with septic issues, but the fact that there'll be over 30,000 square feet of impermeable surface, which increases the flashiness of streams. Now that means that when it floods, it goes up a lot faster and then it goes down a lot faster. So it doesn't store the water as efficiently, and it also increases the likelihood of flooding downstream. The other thing it does is adds expense to the city budget because it really takes a lot more maintenance. And I know just from reading the paper, I don't even have to come to these meetings to know that you all are dealing with expenses on a more than regular basis. So when you add flashiness to a stream, then you're adding dollars that you're going to have to spend in that maintenance. So, not to mention an increased flood drought cycle, and if you look at drought maps in this area, when you look, strangely enough, in the areas north of Kansas City, there are some concerns about droughts in the future. The second point I would make outside of water is looking at the incompatibility with existing uses per the comprehensive plan. I've worked with communities that are tiny little communities that we look like a giant city in comparison, all the way up to cities that are 1.8 million people. And when you look at cities of our size and smaller and larger, but in this area, one of the things you notice when you look at the state impaired waters 303D list is that septic is a major cause of pollution in the areas where we have primary septic. So what that means is that in the long term, when we look at the value of our community and the quality of our community, we're choosing to degrade our community and make it less attractive to not only businesses, but people who want to come here and live in the area. The second point of incompatibility would be in regard to the character of that area. It's in the furthest reaches out of the city and serves as kind of a buffer zone between us and Kansas City and their growth. When a community goes to the trouble of creating a comprehensive plan, they can choose to either put it up on a shelf and ignore it, and I've seen a lot of communities do this to their detriment. When there's a lot of people that are always going to want a million things from you all, and I know you know that. But unless there is a concern of safety or a dire situation, the making of that comprehensive plan took a lot of person hours and was made with good judgment and thinking ahead. And so, in expressing my opinions against this particular rezoning, I would ask you to consider that. Thank you for this time.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Bill Jesse. I live 133rd, 15, North Virginia.
Okay.
When I moved out there, it was pretty well country. Now, Forest Oaks is across the street from me, and Virginia has become a racetrack. It's 35-mile zone. I don't think anybody drives less than, well, I say anybody, majority of them drive 50 or 60 on it. So that's one problem. 132nd Street west of Virginia will probably never be open because I think that's Kansas City. It's not Smithville. So they'll probably never open that. Second thing, she covered septic tanks pretty well, but the house on my south has septic tank and laterals. She's had problems with them over the years. She's got the problem solved now. The house behind me has 10 acres. When he built his house, he put a septic tank behind the house and found out when he put the laterals in that they would not perk. So he had to put the laterals in the front of the house and pump the sewage to the front of the house. So I'm saying that if he hadn't had 10 acres, if he'd only had 3 acres, what would he have done? You know, it'd be a big problem. Also, Eric's house is right in the middle of this plot, and he's keeping 10 acres. When they built his house, they dug a lot of rock out, big rock, probably rocks as big as this desk is, and they buried them on what's going to be lot 16. So there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of rocks there, and as we know, Clay County's got a lot of clay. It doesn't absorb moisture very well. So I'm saying that we need 10 acres and not 3 acres, because I'm sure there's going to be some kids moving in there. I don't want to see them playing in sewage and let it drain into the creek there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Foreman, 13601 North Virginia. We as a group have talked about this, and we really feel that Mr. Dunham certainly has a right to develop his property. We really don't have a problem with that. I mean, if you don't do that, then you gotta get your wallet out. And I understand that completely. But we've got some problems. I think this 3 acre versus 10 acre, if you look and follow 132nd over to Mount Olivet, then you go north to all the way to 92, and then cut across 92 to Tillman, then come down on Tillman to 144th, go back to the east or the west of it, and come back on Virginia. You will find that all those lots, these are not 3 acre lots. So what you're doing is you're allowing something that doesn't belong there, okay? Let alone all the sewage issues that are related to having a bunch of really a high-density area there. They're going to put streets in there also. They're going to have all kinds of roof lines. They're going to have concrete patios and concrete and decks, and all that stuff helps the water run off. Now, I have property that joins this property on the north of it, and I could show you incredible amounts of erosion coming off of that hillside that is proposed to be put into a development. And, you know, there's nothing in here that I see that has anything to do with water retention. And if the developer wishes to develop this, then there should be some consideration for this, because this flash flooding is a real issue. It is amazing after a rain shower how much damage is done. And it takes a lot of work to try to fix some of that. And some of it you can't fix because it's gone. And Wilkerson Creek is the benefactor. We have Wilkerson runs through our property also, so we see how violent and how big that gets. And it gets bigger and bigger every year. This isn't something new. Also wanted to mention my concern again. I've already mentioned the runoff on sewer, the septics. I'm very concerned about that. And this is something that doesn't make sense to me. You know, putting in 7, 10 acre lots is a whole lot better as far as the runoff and the potential for damage downstream. And I just think it just makes sense, especially for this piece of property with everything surrounding it, you know, in larger lots. One thing that I did hear today, that the new tax thing passed, and there's going to be money for trails and things. And this gets back to what the comprehensive land use plan describes, you know. And when Mayor Fulmer and I were working on that, and Adam was working on it, we've all had our hands in it, good or bad. And you know, there is a plan there, and there's a purpose to it, to connect Smithville, to be able to walk and enjoy. You know, our farm is all part of that conservation area. We have a lot of timber. God's blessed us, and so we really enjoy that. And eventually someone else will enjoy it, because we'll be gone. And we want to take care of it for the next generation. So we're asking not to allow this, because we don't want the runoff, we don't want the sewer problems coming off of this, and we don't think it fits. And we really believe you should stick to the comprehensive land use plan because it does call for trails. Right here, the developer puts in here, the proposed development is not suited for parks, trails, or other open areas. That's baloney. That's 100% baloney. I live there. And I'm telling you, there's some beautiful hardwood timber, at least 15 acres of it on the north side of this property, that could be well used for parks. Now, that's also the best property to sell to somebody who wants to live in the woods. And I get that too. But this property is suitable for all the uses that is called out for in the conservation areas of the comprehensive land use plan. Lastly, there is the Station Meadows is an unusual development. It was put together by a man named Coram. And Mr. Coram was a pretty cool guy. He had a cemetery, he's gone now, but his family had a cemetery right behind the house. It was the Coram Cemetery. In that cemetery is a revolutionary bodyguard for George Washington. Sorry. And that's the truth. And he's there, and the DAR and the other organizations keep it maintained and mowed, and it's beautiful. And Mr. Coram wanted to protect this. So what he did is when he sold Station Meadows, he put a clause in the deeds, or deed restriction, so it couldn't be further subdivided. He wanted to protect it and cushion it from encroachment. So I believe, unless there's been something changed that we're not aware of, we believe that the Station Meadows portion of Mr. Dunham's proposal has deed restrictions that would preclude it being subdivided again. And that would just be something we'd ask you to consider before you approve this. Because if that does happen, it certainly makes this a moot point. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Matt Edwards, and I live at 1800 Northeast 132nd Street. And Sergeant Coram is in my backyard. That's where the cemetery is, and the other day he said he did not want this neighborhood. I don't know about all the septic tanks and all that stuff. I know that I moved out to Smithville so that my kids could have the experience I had when I grew up. 10 acres, I was in the woods all the time playing in the creek. And I'm a professor of music at Missouri Western State University in St. Joe. We have family in Overland Park. This is a perfect middle ground. And we had lived in a neighborhood for a while, and all of us didn't want to be in a neighborhood, so we moved out here. So I'm just a little guy saying I'm really irritated by this neighborhood. I don't want this neighborhood to be here. I don't want to see street lights. I don't want more cars flying up and down 132nd Street, which they already do. And I've gone through 4 mailboxes now. So I'm sure there's a lot of details that I am missing, but I like what someone said about this area being a buffer to the city here. Smithville is not, where we are in Smithville shouldn't be a whole bunch of neighborhoods. Yes, we have neighborhoods here and there. I think there are other plots of land that Mr. Dunham owns that perhaps could handle more neighborhoods. But I know I can't stop it. I'm just a little guy. I just have my little house that I want my kids to grow up in, run around on the land, shoot their guns and ride their go-karts and all that kind of thing. But I would ask if there be some consideration for those of us that are around there. I don't know if trees could be put up or larger lots for sure I would vote for. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, yes. I'm Lucy. I'm Lucy Hirsch, 13501 North Virginia. My east line is on some of the northern part of this. I would like to put your attention to what was said earlier by these people who were worried about the Paradise 156 point thing and that they didn't want any animals anywhere near their house. This is an example of why we have zoning, to prevent incompatibilities. We are almost all surrounding this agriculturally current zoned land with agriculturally active land. I have horses and sometimes have cows. There are cows, pigs, chickens, sheep, goats, donkeys, snakes, possums, coyotes, raccoons, rats, mice, stuff that lives in the country. When someone buys a 3-acre lot even if it's zoned AR. If it's not at least 5 or more like 10, they pretty much usually build a house and mow the whole thing. It's a lawn. It will be fertilized, it will have nitrogen running off, as well as more water. It's currently a hayfield and woods. Every tree you cut, more runoff. The hay turns into a pasture or a lawn, more runoff. Streets, roofs, but we've talked about runoff. Besides the incompatibility with the neighbors, 10 acres in the current ag is safer for septic. We have septic tanks that fail on 10 acres and are trouble. I know every one of you think for just a second about complaints about septic on 3-acre lots somewhere, and if you can't think of any, I'll mention Barton Heights, because they've been that way for 100 years practically. 3 acres is sometimes enough for septic and sometimes not, and if it's not, you're in big trouble. Better for the Wilkerson Creek watershed to have 10-acre lots than 3. Better for the conservation area, which includes an area of special interest, I think that's what they call it, the stippled area in the comprehensive plan, special something.
Natural resource area.
Yeah, better for that if it stays 10-acre lots. And he can still develop it 10-acre lots, doesn't have to build as much road. The other thing, on the comprehensive plan that I helped develop, and the one before that, and the one we have now, there is a major parkway, boulevard, coming north, where Woodland comes north from the interstate, and they imagine it coming right on the property line between this land and my land, and turning, it used to go through Bob Foreman to the east up to the lake, and now it goes through him to the west, down to Amory Road. But this is a huge major traffic intersector boulevard that's in the plan. If you don't put some kind of protection in the form of easements, or you don't build on this part of the land now on this piece, years later you're going to not only have to buy lots, you're going to have to buy houses to bulldoze them. So you need to think about enacting your comprehensive plan. What's it there for if you don't do it? So that road really has me worried. Do I want that road there? No, not really, but if it's going to be there, I only want it half on my land. If you put 3-acre houses on the other side of it, then you're going to put the whole thing on my land and force me off of it. Someday, I'll be dead by then. But zoning protects the city and its citizen landowners from incompatible uses on neighboring properties. It prevents complaints because people have common expectations. They know what their zoning is. They know what they can do on it. When you put in some new different zoning, then you change that and you create border wars and boundaries where there weren't any before. This zoning doesn't fit with the area until there's sewers. When there are sewers, if there are ever sewers, then you could do the cluster thing, and that would be really cool. That's the best way to do a density overlay in an area like this. But you can't do it now. If you put it 3-acre lots, you're permanently chopping it up, and it can never be made any denser, or it isn't wild, it's neither. It's not open space. I mean, a yard, somebody's lawn is not open space. It's a lawn, and they protect it like a lawn. And why would you rezone something because one person in a whole area wants it? I don't like the current rules. I want some different rules, so will you change them for me? And all the rest of us don't want them changed because we border up against it and it will affect us. Comprehensive plan, lots of really good words that were worked very hard to put there about natural resources, conservation areas, trails, watershed protections, designing the growth to come from the center out rather than having it go from the periphery in. It talks about quality developments, and I hear words like, it meets our minimum standards. Minimum standards don't equal quality. They equal how much can we squeeze out of this land for our profit? Who cares about the city? Who cares about the people around? No, I don't dislike Eric Dunham at all. I'm not, but when you stamp out as many 3-acre lots as you can on an AR, that's what you're doing. You're getting as much money out of it as you can, and you're not talking about quality. Quality infrastructure, keeping pace with development. Hopscotch doesn't do that. Septic, we've talked to septic a lot. I agree, 3 acres isn't. Stormwater, one drop tank. it's one lot at a time. Each lot, you're making a little problem a little bigger, and then the next development a little and a little and a little, and soon it's huge, and you're... Don't do that. Stop it now. I don't know if when you do the platting stages, if you can require covenants that have water barrels or rain fountains or French drains, or if you can do any of that or not. It's all in the plan, but unless you do it, it doesn't happen. There are currently, I mentioned the cows, horses, dogs, pig, turkeys, all that stuff, brush piles. There's a shooting range that will be a few yards from swing sets in backyards if you do this. The shooting range is perfectly legal where it is, but if you have people who put in 3-acre lots with their houses and their mowed lawns next to it, there are going to be complaints. And how do you keep the kids from trespassing and scary? I have horses. Feed the nice horsey a sugar cube and it bites my fingers off, and then they sue me because I had a nice horsey. Help! It just doesn't mix with the suburban type of a 3-acre lot. 10 acres, they make their little lawn around their house, and then you've got all this big open space, and it's fine. The road easement, I'm really worried about you saving that, so it can happen eventually. You talk about in the plan about connecting roads north and south and east and west to get the flow of the traffic going. This is the one that connects you to the intersection on 435. You need to preserve a place to put that road every time a development, including my kids after I die, to leave a place for it to happen, or it won't happen because you won't be able to afford it. You have 3, 10, so they put the house where the road's not going to be. No problem later, but 3, you're bulldozing houses to put that road through. The worst thing you can do is stamp out a whole bunch of 3-acre lots. It gobbles up the countryside fast. Subdivisions that have little lots, R1 stuff is better for the long term. You can take care of it better. 3 acres are the worst. 10 acres allow for more dense stuff later when the infrastructure catches up. 3 acres doesn't. You pretty much can never do it again. The way with all the restrictions that the AR has on this small a lot, you can have one horse or cow, large animals, more smaller ones, per acre, except for the acre the house is on, so that's down to 2 acres, and then it has to be so many feet back from here and there, and pretty soon the place your horse is the size of that parking lot. That's a dry lot. That isn't what people want for open space or to live next to with their nice suburban 3-acre lawn. They need larger lots if they're going to put animals on them. And the wildlife are going to bother everybody because everyone thinks they want to live next to wildlife until they do. So I beg you to keep it in A1. They can put in 6 or 7 10-acre lots and make an easement for the future extension of the woodland. But if they ever got possible easement for future storm management, and yes, you can put a trail in here. I talk a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jesse Henley. I live at 13416 Horseshoe Drive West. And first I'd like to ask the question, is the water supply that's going to be feeding this development, is it county water? Do we know?
Yes.
County water? Well, I've lived where I've lived since 1986, and I've seen a lot of houses be developed around here, and nice homes. And the problem water in pretty dramatic ways, and I have a real concern about that high density of properties on our already overtaxed water supply system, creating more problems for the people who already live here and have a lot of money tied up in our homes. And I hope we address that.
Thank you. Jack, is Mr. Dunham here?
He's got a representative here. I don't think Mr. Dunham himself's here.
Excuse me, good evening. I'm just getting over a little bout with
I'm not sure what, so pardon my voice. My name's Bob Dunham. I'm Eric's older brother, handsome older brother, and I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm going to try to adhere to the 3-minute limit and be out of here. It's getting late for old people. I have absolutely no opposition to his proposal. My concern, and I'll ask you the question, if you approve his request, does that spill over into Clay County? And the reason I ask that is confusing. My place is directly south of the proposed rezoning, on which I have a grass 3,000 foot long grass runway that has been approved, and I repeat, it's been approved by the Clay County Zoning Board, the Federal Aviation Administration. It's a matter of record. I jumped through all the loops 20, 25 years ago. And so my concern is, I don't want it, I don't want to have somebody buy a lot and then build a house and then start screaming about the airplane that's flying over their house. The runway has existed there long before, it's been in existence for 25, 30 years now. So I just want to make it a matter of record that, like I say, I support his proposal, but I have concern if it affects my runway, because I spent my entire life, a career in aviation, and airplanes are my true love. Sorry, Donna. But anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mark Krokstrom, 109 West Pine, Smithville. You're the gentleman I'm supposed to call when I fly my drone.
Hey, I've talked to you before.
So, obviously, I don't live anywhere near this area, so some people might be wondering, what could this guy possibly have to say about this? And I think part of it is a little bit of experience in the last, 30, 40 years of my life. My family bought a lake home at the Lake of the Ozarks sometime in the 80s when I was a kid. And it was what it was, and it is what it is now. It's a mess down there. And it got that way one minimum standard at a time. The 3 acres with the runoff, or with the septic tanks. The Lake of the Ozarks was just, in all aspects of life down there, we did the minimum of everything that they could do, and now it's just a disaster with condos everywhere and boats everywhere, and there's just no limits whatsoever. If this is a conservation area and we're talking about putting in a bunch of septic systems, what could possibly go wrong? When I was on the board here, people said, that my friends would ask, well, what's it like being on the board? Is it fun? And what do you guys talk about most? And my answer seemed to always be water, sewage, or something like that. It always revolved around water in this city for some reason, whether the fresh water was good or whether we were blowing people's pipes out in their basement downtown. It was, and we wound up spending a fortune to fix that problem. But if we're talking about wrecking creeks, in the process, we're possibly wrecking creeks with busted, septic systems. And I know we get those things fixed, but what it takes to fix them after, they break, and what then the damage they do when they're broken, it's just a drag. So I would hope you consider opposing this thing and sticking with larger lot sizes and things that fit. These people, when they move into these places, I guarantee you, someday they're going to go over to Bob's and they're going to go, could you shoot quieter? Can't shoot quieter. and he was there, and it's legal, and they're gonna be flipping out when their kids are out front and they hear pop. So, take it for what it's worth. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just had a quick second thought. Any decision that you all come to, does that spill over into Clay County? In other words, I'm in the county, I'm not in Smithville, I'm in the county. So is there any correlation between your policies and decisions in Clay County?
No.
Because like I say, I've jumped through all the...
No, your zoning is in place. The changes, any changes in the city won't in fact change any of your approvals.
Okay, well, I assumed that, but, you know, we all know the story behind assumptions. So I just want to make it perfectly clear that, you know, I've done everything that I'm required to do, and, you know, I didn't think there was any connection between you all and Clay County, but I just wanted to, you know, verify and confirm it. So thank you very much.
Can you make your airplanes quieter?
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this. You got one more? Okay.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes.
Name and address, please.
I'm getting to it. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you first. Shane Alexander, 13412 Horseshoe. My property is borders Mr. Dunham's property on my west side and his east side, at the back of the proposed development. And I want to start off by also thanking Mr. Dunham because the letter in the mail, I gave him a call. He was very gracious. We talked for a little while on the phone, and then he invited me over to the big house to take a look at the plat. I'd never been in the big house before. It's very impressive. It looks like something out of a magazine. He gave me a copy of the plat. My wife and I looked at it and weren't real sure about what we were going to say about it and if we had anything to say that would even really matter. But I think out of all the properties that you've heard from tonight, ours is probably, if not the most directly impacted, one of them. Our property is sort of bowl-shaped. We're downhill from everybody. We've lived there for about 13 years, and I guess one of the good things about all this is that now my wife and I have met more of our neighbors in the last 10 days than we did in 13 years.
They're all here.
And that's a great thing. I wish we had some other better reason to come together than this. My kids have grown up on that property. My boy plays in that creek all the time. He has a little fishing camp set up at one of the pools there. And actually, I apologize for the way I'm dressed tonight. I just left baseball practice before I came here. But concern. As I said, Mr. Dunham was very gracious and in inviting me over and talking to me about it. I think everyone is in agreement that 10-acre lots, he can already do that. So the question is, do we move it to 3 or not? And our concerns, I think, we have 3 of them, and people have touched on all of them, but I wanted you to hear from me also. One is increased traffic on 132nd Street. I don't know if you all are real familiar with 132nd Street right there, but it's very hilly. There is no shoulder. You cannot see a car coming from the other direction on the other side of the hill. You can't. Even so, cars fly up and down it just like they do on Virginia. And I think within the last year, there have been at least 2 accidents on 132nd right around where the entrance to the proposed subdivision will be. One involved 2 cars and one involved a car hitting a deer. There are a lot of deer around there. So that's a major concern, is the increase in traffic, a public safety issue, I think. The other concerns involve septic. You've heard a lot about that, and all I can tell you is that we're on septic, and we struggle with it a lot. And since, as I've said, my kids and their friends play in that creek, I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about, 6 more homes versus 19 more homes. It is an exponential increase in the septic risk. It's a risk. It's not something that's going to happen the day after they put in the tank, but it's something that can happen down the line, and most likely will. And the other part is the storm runoff. Now, my property, as I said, is in a bowl. On the front side of it, my driveway goes right over that creek. On the back side of it, there's a ditch that starts on Mr. Dunham's property and gets bigger as it goes across mine, and it separates my house from my barn. That's, I think, what people refer to as a wet weather creek. It's dry most of the time. But when it's wet, oh my goodness, it's wet. It is a raging torrent going down through there, and erosion is a major concern. The bigger concern is the driveway. When we get a lot of rain right now, it is, again, a raging torrent down there so hard that many times the water can't even go all the way through, go through the culvert. It blows out around the side, takes out part of my driveway, and goes and finds its way down the creek on another area. We are really worried that if this proposed development goes forward and we have another one of those storms, that increased runoff will just blow that driveway right out of there. It's a big issue for us, and we are very concerned about that. As I said, I don't think anyone here opposes the 10 acres, although I wish it didn't, any of it have to happen. But it's not my land, and I don't want to interfere with Mr. Dunham's ability to develop his property, as long as it doesn't adversely impact us. That's all. And so, thank you very much for your time again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Sat too long.
It's Eric Dunham, 2000 Northeast 132nd Street, and this will really be quick. The lots are all going to be, have restrictions and covenants about animals, and the house sizes are going to be in the $450,000 to $500,000, excuse me, I haven't talked for a while, $500,000 range. The lots are $100,000 each, and I would love to do 10-acre lots, but I can't. It's too cost prohibitive. The road and utilities is going to take 6 to 7 of the lots just to pay for that. So I would love to do 10-acre lots. If I could do an easy road in there that wouldn't cost anything, I'd do it in a heartbeat. The only reason I'm doing it is because I want to get rid of the house, and I've tried to sell that house and the 74 acres for 2 years, and just no buyers. So I'm forced to try to get it down where I can get the house sold. And like I say, if I could do 10-acre lots, that's what I would love to do. But to make money, if I make $300,000 total on this whole deal, it'll be a miracle. I'm just trying to get my money back from what I gave for the house. So, thank you all.
I'm going to close the public, do we have one more? Oh.
No, this gentleman hasn't spoken, so he has an opportunity.
Art Novins, 13550 North Virginia. To say, I appreciate Mr. Dunham and what he's done in the area, the conservation and stuff, the animals and stuff. No problem with him whatsoever. No problem with developing, except for, of course, the 10 down to 3 acre issue. And he kind of said it for himself. He wants to make money, he doesn't want to lose, okay? But he's not going to lose if he sticks to 10 acres. He's sure of that. I have no doubt. We're all sure of that. But the same thing, he impacts our property values as well, if this goes through the way he wants. And I would ask him to be just as considerate of us as he is of himself, and I'm sure he wants us to be considerate of him. He wouldn't want any of us building right on top of him, so to speak. I mean, we know that's not true. And the other issue that hadn't been touched on here, I know 132nd had been touched on here, but also we got North Virginia that is, it's a decent road and all that. But also, there's that highly inadequate Amory, that this is going to impact quite a bit. And I think everyone here is aware of